Yes, you are. You're the sweetest little dog. Yes, you are.
Did you guys have a good Christmas?
We did have a good Christmas. You had a good Christmas, Ben?
Yeah, like you said, same old.
Like, oh shit.
Same.
Dealing with family.
Welcome to Characters, a show where, in the dawn of AI, we are trying to better understand the human condition. Season 3 is all about our true colours, stripping away the grey and revealing what haunts, excites us and drives our purpose. I'm Jack, and as your host, I aim to provide our guests with a safe space, aware of potential judgment, to promote vulnerability, empathy and humility. On this show, we aren't focused on who our guest is, what they've achieved or their opinion on society. We've included links in the description for that. We're instead interested in how they overcome anxiety, deal with envy, or embrace forgiveness and gratitude. I really hope you can gain and grow from what our guest has taken a leap and shared for our benefit.
Can you describe your taste in interiors and design?
I really like mid-century modern interiors, and the colours of autumn mainly in a living space, and a living space that feels very warm and cosy. Coziness is what I like the most.
Coziness. What makes something cozy about that?
I think it's got everything to do with light and colour. So I have a lot of practical lighting in my house. I don't like putting the main lights on. I just like very soft lights and fairy lights and the few neon lights, here and there, just to give it some kind of atmosphere.
Amazing. Have you and your friends ever argued about taste?
Strangely enough, no, because I don't think that taste is something you would argue about if you're confident in your own choices. I don't think I would be friends with someone who would want to argue about taste, because at the end of the day, who cares? Your taste, right?
Curious. It's a funny thing because I've made a film about your father, and I'm very interested in the decor of their home, because it feels like I want to say clash of like these different worlds of like, you've got this beautiful wood and then you've got these characters that are sort of dotted around the house. Is that something you've ever observed before?
No, but I find it really exciting to hear what you think about their house, because my taste is very different to theirs. I look at their house and I think this looks like a Victorian doll's house. The choice of all the furniture, it's maximalist, it's too much for me. And a lot of people, when I've been on video calls at work, have said, "Are you in a museum?" So I'm like, no, it's just my mum and dad's house. But I'm interested to know, what's the clash that you observe?
Well, I see it as this the pottery and these characters and these little people and characters in amongst all of this really. Not that the characters are unrefined, but refined and thought about woodwork and beautifully turned things. And it just, I don't know, it's something that I've never seen before, a combination of taste that I've never seen before. I was very interested to hear what you thought about it.
So if you think about my mum's career path, was she wanted to go to art school, but she had to become a hairdresser when she was 15, and then she moved down south. And her whole life your whole life's about people if you're cutting people's hair, right? And when you're sat in that chair, much like this situation, and you're having your hair cut, you're kind of a bit vulnerable. And you can't, because you're relaxed and because you have to stay still, you're probably more likely to want to discuss whatever's gone on in your day. So you're sort of, as a hairdresser, you're probably part-time therapist as well at the same time. But I imagine she's got an awful lot of characters in her head and memories of people, and those people sort of merge into each other. You know, can you imagine? And I find that I really remember people individually, and I feel like I could pour that out into a sketchbook one day, something I'll do probably when I've retired. But I really do remember people and their sort of characteristics, and I think that's where it comes from with her. She once made this entire series of dough dollies, and there were just hundreds of them. And
What is a dough dolly?
It's a little doll made of dough that looks like it's made of a biscuit. So it looks like a person it looks like a biscuit, and kids go, "Can we eat that?" And it's like, no, you hang it on the wall in your kitchen.
Right.
It's just like, you know, a housewife's thing that they do if they've got, I don't know, time to kill. I don't know. But yeah, she used to make hundreds of these things, and she would sell them all. They would all go. They were all different characters, and she used to make cakes with people on top of them, all sorts. So she always sort of drawn caricatures and people. And then if you think about it from my father's point of view, the reason why he does wood turning is in place of his previous drinking habit. So to deal with his sobriety, a lot of the advice that they give you if you go to rehab is you need to take up a hobby. And he took up the hobby of wood turning because it reminds him of when he was working on boats when he was a teenager. And that was obviously his happy place. He obviously loved it and wanted to pick it up again.
Amazing. And it's just wonderful. And I wonder, so tell me about you, tell me about fashion, tell me about education and how you've got yourself into it. If that's even possible.
Yeah, no, I can. So I've set up a course at London College of Fashion, and it's a master's course in film in a fashion context. So it's not necessarily the most theoretical qualification. It's entirely based in practice. But obviously we do research at level 7, which is part of doing a master's course. So the reason for that also is that fashion is a communication tool, much like film is, and fashion is the first thing that you see when you meet someone, and it can be laden with all sorts of symbolism that will tell you about the status of that person, their politics, anything, you know. So I've been somebody that's experimented with that a lot over my life, because I used to work in Camden Market in Cybertalk.
Wow.
And I used to dance all day.
Wow.
And I used to be like, I'm going to dress like an alien.
Wow.
And I experimented a lot with the way that I dressed, and I was really interested in the way that people responded to me. And I found it bizarre that people would respond in, it was just all sorts of different responses I would get, from complete disdain to people like applauding me in the street. I went into a art gallery, and the owner of the art gallery handed me a bag full of books on the artist I was looking at in this amazing gallery in London. He just gave me the books and said, "You're a work of art, here you go, here's the books." Which was quite an amazing and strange experience, mainly because of what I was wearing and how I'd chosen to present myself. So I found that really interesting early on. However, the reason for me doing all of this is obviously David getting his job here. And they always had friends in the film industry. And obviously your father was friends with my dad. And my mum used to cut the hair of an art director called Brian Savagar. And he was the art director for A Room with a View. And he made that series called Dinosaurs. I don't know whether you're too young to remember it, but it was life-size puppets of dinosaurs. And he'd won like everything you can win. He'd won an Oscar and an Emmy, and we'd watched him on the Oscars, and we were like, "Oh, it's Brian," because he used to come and have his hair cut, and he was this enormous Welsh man with it's so much personality, and he would just be like, "Oh, you should come and work on one of my films." And it's a terrible Welsh accent, but so I did. When I was 17, I went to work on a feature film he was making with like Alicia Silverstone in it from Clueless and a whole bunch of other people. And I spent 3 months there, took 3 months off my A-levels in art department. And it was incredible to witness him, because he was the sort of person that would just drink gin all day. And he would send me off as a 17-year-old to go and buy him gin. And he would just order a sofa so he could sleep for most of the day. And then if somebody called and said, can you draw this thing? He would draw it absolutely perfectly. Like he had a sort of mind's eye that was so incredible. And he could draw, it was all about Bentleys, the Bentley cars. So he could draw them from memory. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And this is pre-internet. So it was really inspiring. And he handed me a script and he said, it was the script for the feature film. And he made me make a shooting script with a pair of scissors and a physical script. So I had to chop the script up and organise it into shoot days. And half of it was shot on location in France. So I had to sort it out into location days and all this kind of stuff. And then I was sat there in the office because we were waiting for things to happen. That's how things go. And I was drawing a glass of water and he went, why are you bothering doing that? It's such a waste of time. Just read the script and imagine it frame by frame and think about the sound. And I was like, wow, I started doing that and I was like, oh, this is really a really exciting process to read something and then have to imagine it frame by frame. And that was like the catalyst for everything that followed, pretty much.
Wow. I just want to take you back to fashion.
Yeah.
And when I mention the word fashion, there's a kind of an eye roll in there. I sense.
Fashion's a dirty word,
right? So what would you call it?
I don't know. I think fashion is kind of like you can't take it seriously. It is just clothes. It is just something you wear. But I have found it really interesting in how people intellectualise over it through this experience of working at London College of Fashion. And I didn't realise it was so sort of three-dimensional. And after speaking to all the amazing people that work there and listening to the students and from the designers to the marketing to the business side of things, it is quite fascinating and extremely relevant right now.
So I sense there's a kind of a clash in there somewhere within you of like, it's not to be taken seriously, but it also is.
Yes, I think it's both. It can be both. It should be both. That's what it feels like to me, certainly.
So how do you decide how to frame it, dependent on who you're talking to?
Because all the way that everything is presented is laden with meaning, and you have to unpack that stuff to really understand who you're speaking to. Because as we know, fashion moves so extremely fast, and some people are completely irresponsible with it and can completely offend enormous groups of people just by not thinking too deeply about it and sort of, deciding to sort of appropriate something or misrepresent something, or, you start unpacking these things and you realise that fashion is about everyone and everyone needs to be seen within fashion so it reflects exactly what we are. It can't just be one sort of person. And the same with the connotation of clothing. I mean, you only have to watch Adam Curtis documentaries to understand how fashion has been used in the sort of emotional history of the world, from politicians to, whoever.
So talk to me about now. Talk to me about how fashion is being used now, in your opinion.
How is fashion being used now? Well, I mean, that's such a massive question because it's everywhere and it's used in so many different contexts, and I don't think that's got one answer to it, because it's different in pop culture than it is in politics, than it is in any other, like uniforms or, there's so much that I just feel like that's a bit of an impossible question to answer.
Certainly. I guess I was trying to ask as open question as possible so you can answer it in the way that you want to, rather than put something in, frame it in a way that, so I guess it depends what's important to one. You know, if you're into politics, and then it's the reference of how fashion is affecting that, and if you're into pop culture, then it's how it's affecting that. And so, yes, of course, there's all the little islands. I totally appreciate. Speaking of unpacking, shall we unpack the alien and the
What alien?
the alien that you were dressing as, and explore that?
Okay.
Was there a reason why? Can you pinpoint a reason why you were dressing
I
up,
was
or was it
bored.
as an experiment?
I think I would. I think. Well, I think when you go to university for the first time, it's the first time you've moved away from home, and you're free. And I was an art student through and through. I wasn't going to do anything else. Even in my A levels, I was like, I'm not doing anything else apart from this. This is who I am. And then when you're young and gorgeous, you're like, I'm gonna do whatever like I'm gonna present myself in all sorts of different ways. And that's how and it was all about music, really. Everything was connected to music for all of us. So I felt like I found my people there at the time. And I just loved working in that job, and it was really good fun. Every day was a fun day, and it was about having a job that you enjoyed. And that probably comes back to my father saying, do not do a job that you don't enjoy. Because I spent the day with him in an estate agent's when he was selling houses and hotels and nightclubs. And he gave me a pile of photos. This is pre-computer days again. He gave me a pile of photos and he said, can you just stick those on these adverts? And I spent like hours peeling off this sticky back tape on the back of these photos and physically sticking them on. And I was like, how do you do this all day? It's so boring. And he was like, yeah, that's why I gave it to you to do, because I didn't want to do it.
Thanks very much.
So, anyway, he just always said, you need to do a job that you enjoy. And that was the beginning of me trying to find a job that didn't feel like a job.
Free labour from the parents, love it. Have you ever sabotaged your own success?
Sabotage your own success. I think I may have sabotaged my own success when I was just coming out of that phase of working in Cyberdog, and I went into a job interview with the wrong shoes on. See, here we go, back to fashion. And I was still in the sort of like, I can wear whatever I want. I can express myself however I want. And I walked into a job interview to be an assistant to a photographer who needed somebody who was ready to run around and lift up lights and, whatever. And I turned up in very stupid shoes and quite a smart outfit, but it was a bit too fashion. And the guy coming in after me was just wearing jeans and trainers and a hat and looked super scruffy. And in that interview, I remember thinking, every choice I've made here was the wrong choice. And it's back to fashion. It's about how you present yourself and what you're telling that person about you. And the thing that the woman that was interviewing me understood was she can't come to work in those shoes. She'll trip over everything. She's too concerned with fashion, probably, to run around and lift up lights and do all that stuff.
Wow. And do you know that for a fact, or
no? That's my interpretation of it.
Sure.
Absolutely, my interpretation of it. Because, at the time as well, I think she was looking for a young guy to help lift stuff. And I had done days before in studios where I couldn't lift things. And I was perfectly fine me working with people, but I was like, I'll try and lift it. But that's how I ended up with a herniated disc in my back from working at Pinewood and lifting something I shouldn't have lifted.
Oh, bless you.
Yeah.
That was your
enthusiastic.
Body. That was your body telling you,
what are you doing?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
You're in the wrong job here.
Yeah. You're not invincible or strong.
What was the last piece of work you were doing when you forgot time altogether?
The last piece of work that I did when I forgot time altogether, it's probably when I'm painting.
I didn't know you were an artist.
I'd studied fine art painting and I went to the National Film and Television School and I did animation. I got a scholarship to do animation.
Go on.
Yeah, and I made a film when I was doing that scholarship, which became the most awarded film to come out of the National Film and Television School. And it was all life-size animation with people. And I used to be a commercials director at my favourite company ever. And I had an agent in America. No.
Part of the beauty of this is I know
Do you not know any of
absolutely
this?
none of this.
Oh, great.
So you can
Yeah,
tell
I'm not
me.
discuss it. No, I'm joking.
So
I
you
put-
you can tell me, and
Okay.
I'll be
Surprised.
surprised. No, not surprised. Oh, of course, you're capable of many things. You can do whatever you want to do, Vicky.
Thanks.
You need to hear it from me. Forgot time altogether.
Forgot time altogether, probably when I was painting. And that often happens when I'm painting because I think that it blocks out, if the painting's big enough, it'll block out your peripheral vision and then you'll just be fully in it.
Wow. And what's that like? What's that? What does that give you?
Freedom.
Where you don't get it in other areas?
I walk a lot, obviously, with my dog, and I feel like that's the ultimate freedom. I think walking is like the best thing ever. Just being in nature. I know it's become very trendy recently. Being away from a screen is obviously a luxury these days. That's where I think I find freedom, which is like walking and painting and those sorts of things.
I totally, the walking and the freedom of that. And actually, the ability to think and reflect and you come up with new ideas, actually, on walks is I find to be wonderful. Who has offered you the most useful career advice?
When I finished my degree, I was very lost and I was walking a lot. And that's how I was kind of trying to heal after university because it was a bit traumatic at the end because I had a degree in fine art and I was like, I can't get a job anywhere. But I want to work in film. How am I going to do that? Oh, I need a driving license. You know, I was trying to get back to that after the experience of university. And the advice that I'd been given when I was working at Ealing Studios when I was 17 was to go to Kingston University, which is where I went. But he was saying to study architecture, and I studied fine art, and I should have done architecture. But I don't regret any of that now because I wouldn't be who I was if I hadn't done it. But yeah, when I left uni, I was like freelancing as a photographer, doing stuff for some magazines, working with musicians, then realising how much I hate musicians. And then music producers were asking me to make music videos to go with whatever things I was shooting for them for editorials. And I didn't know really where to start in terms of making films. So I met somebody on MySpace. MySpace was so transformative for me.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I met this guy, Keaton Henson, who's now a musician, because I was looking for a model to go on the front of an album cover that I was doing some commission. And he was like, oh, my girlfriend, she's gorgeous. You should work with her. So I was like, all right, then I'll come to Richmond and meet you there. Anyway, me and Keaton just stayed friends and ended up writing a little story together. And at the same time, I was like speaking to various people, mainly through my mum and dad's friends, people that they've been friends with over the years. Somebody my mum painted with, her husband used to be a producer, and I went and had a chat with him. And I said, I really want to make films. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. I've done a degree in fine art. I feel completely like it's not going to help me do anything, but I'd like to either work in art department or work in animation or something. And I had I'd worked on lots of small jobs. And I also had a job on Bow Selector. And I did costume on Bow Selector.
Amazing.
And that was really, really fun. I never laughed so hard in my life. Like my whole face hurt at the end of every day, which was really fun. And that was all at Pinewood on the TV stage. So it was just it was such great fun. Didn't appreciate any of it at the time, but great fun. And I spoke to them as well. I was talking to Lee Francis about whether he wanted to be a director. And he was like, no, it's too much responsibility. I much prefer being an actor or whatever, or the star of the show. So I had some understanding of all the different roles and everything, but I did rely on this sort of external advice from people with no agenda to kind of give me some kind of direction. And this one producer I spoke to said, well, why don't you go to the National Film and Television School? It is just around the corner from where you live. But what do you want to do? And I couldn't really answer the question. I was like, I don't really know. And he was like, well, read the prospectus, you moron, and try and figure it out. He really did. He was like, just read it, because you can't tell me straight. So I had a look through that and I thought, wow, animation, and at the time we were all really inspired by people in the 1990s, all those directors, like Spike Jonze and all of that kind of stuff, Michel Gondry. And I was writing this animation at the same time with Keaton, the guy I'd met on MySpace. He's a bit younger than me, but he had a really good sense of humour. His dad was actually an actor, Nicky Henson, and he was in Fawlty Towers. And his mum was a ballerina who actually knew somebody I used to do ballet with when I was a kid, which was hilarious. Anyway, me and Keaton ended up writing this little animation together called Stanley Pickle. And I said to him, he was trying to develop his artwork because he was an illustrator and he was publishing some books and writing music. I said, I think I can take this to the film school and actually make it, because we had nothing to make it with. We just made the story, but because we were watching all the same films like Terry Gilliam and Death Becomes Her and all this sort of trashy, funny stuff that we liked. So we were just chucking a sketchbook back and forth, writing this story. And I said, look, I think I'm going to take it to that film school because I've met this producer, give me some advice, and I think I might do it. I also met with Jan, I think, because I was going to because I couldn't afford to do it. And when you apply to the National Film and Television School, you have to prove that you can afford to study there. So I had to do the thing that most producers have to do and look for money. Where does money exist? So anyway, for whatever reason, my research skills were better than I thought they were. And I found some charities and stuff, and I had to go for meetings with them to discuss why I deserved any money to be able to continue my studies. And I did speak to Jan about it, your uncle?
Great uncle.
Great uncle. And he gave me some good advice as well. And I was walking around with a bag full of puppets, basically. And I was getting them out in every meeting and being like, can you see what I'm trying to do here? And these sort of old white men who have the money were like, ha, 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 yes, we can see what you're trying to do. And they'd either think it was sweet and silly, or they'd be like, you're an idiot. So I did manage to raise a little bit of money that way. But I also was lucky enough to get a scholarship to study there. So it was the 2 best years of my entire life were spent there because I had a 24-hour studio and equipment available to me permanently for 2 years, and my own office space. And it was like the dream. So, yeah.
Do you still want to make films?
Not so much anymore. When I graduated, I went to all the festivals. I won tons of awards. I had that whole experience. Didn't realise how rare it was. Didn't realise how much resentment I would get off some people. And then what happens when you win stuff is all the awards look at you and they're like, you'll never make this level again. You'll never beat what you've just done. Anyway, I got a job in advertising as a commercials director, but being able to make money in 2010 after the recession in commercials as a woman making life-size animation was very not easy. So I also didn't really feel like I fit in to that group of people. I also thought commercials were quite pointless, but I was doing it to make money because I thought that will fund my other creative pursuits. But what I didn't realise is that it would take a minimum of 5 years, maybe more, being a woman. At that time, I was the only girl on the books. It was going to take me many more years to actually get regular income. Excuse me. So I worked for like maybe 4 years going from company to company. So I was represented by several amazing companies, including Ardman. And the work was not rolling in because they take your film around to try and sell it or whatever. But my initial interest, I worked for Blink Productions and I wanted to work in fashion film. It was the first thing that came out of my mouth when I met a producer when my film was on the festival run and I was hot right now, as they all kept telling me. I said, "Are you interested in fashion?" And the person who owned the company was like, "I'm so glad you said that because I've just set up a fashion arm." So I was really excited because it meant that I could go and make fashion films, which is what I wanted to do. I did make some fashion films, but trying to get paid for them was really very difficult, even though I did them and they were at a high level and they were in lots of different shops all over the world, globally, in New York, China and UK. But trying to get people to pay me seemed to be very difficult. And I thought, is that because I'm a woman and I can't knock someone out if they don't pay me? I don't know. I couldn't work out. I thought it just was such a minefield. And I was also travelling back and forth to America and I had an agent over there at Anonymous Content who was a lovely woman. She introduced me to everybody. I had a meeting with everyone you could ever want a meeting with. And people were very kind to me and they were like, it's going to take many years. But there were some people that called me back and wanted to develop projects and I was offered 2 scripts to develop into feature films. But by that time, it was, a number of years had gone by and I still wasn't making enough money to live on. I just thought, this is so unrealistic. And I made a short film with a little boy in it and I was talking to his mother in a pub the night before we were shooting. And she was like, well, what are you going to do? Are you just going to direct forever or whatever? And I just said, no, I'll probably do this for a bit more and then I'll teach. It just came out of my mouth and I was like, oh, I'm going to be a teacher. Oh, right. So I kind of took a left turn and I got a job. I thought, what is the one thing that no one that's been in my position would ever want to do? That would be so beneath them. So I went to work in a further education college for hardly any money, but I was living at home at the time, so I could do it. It was the most fascinating 4 years. Fascinating.
Wow.
Naughty teenagers. Amazing. So entertaining. Hilarious.
Fascinating? Like how? What kind of things do they just...
It's like being in a loony bin. Because teenagers are they're not sane because all their hormone levels are all over the place. So in their head, they're like part child, part adult. Their body's changing, so they don't know how to deal with it. And they're kind of despairing at the same time. But if you can make them laugh, it's okay. You just see a ball of stress, or everyone's a ball of stress in front of you. But it was quite an exciting challenge to watch them grow up and make them laugh a bit. Make them feel like they weren't alone, they weren't weird or whatever. And just listen to what they thought about the world, because I think that young people tell you what the future is going to be like. So I thought this is amazing because this is really opening up my eyes and I'm not just on this like sort of narrow road of trying to get financing for films and all of that. It's just not very stimulating.
It sounds like those early days you were driven by sort of means to an end, kind of just getting it done, getting it. But was there what was driving you in terms of passion, in terms of your desire to actually do it, if you know, or what did you want to say?
I felt like I couldn't communicate in words, and I was much better at communicating in pictures. And I thought, well, that's what I've chosen to do, and I must create. Whatever I do, I must create. That's my remit. That's what I've chosen to do. This is the box I'm putting myself in. and I'm sure other people have pushed me towards that as well. And then when I moved into teaching, I realised like I didn't just have one string to my bow, and I realised it was very easy for me to write things, and I wasn't actually struggling as much as I was telling myself I was. So it was the belief that that was all I could really do. But when I worked in education, it's like I sort of healed myself a bit by sort of revealing that that isn't the only thing I can do. I can do all sorts of things. And so can all these young people, and they must never believe they can only do one thing. You know?
So what would you say to the childhood version of you if you could, with all of this hindsight?
I'd probably say don't just stick to one path. Think about lots of other things, because everything feeds into, you know, those vessels for communication. Everything feeds into filmmaking. Everything feeds into storytelling. And you have to experience life, because you see so many filmmakers that they keep making films, and all the films are about making films by the end, because they're not living real life, because it is not real life when you're inside that bubble. And it's only when you move out of it into different areas that you're actually doing some research on what real human experiences are, not these tiny little microcosms of filmmakers who only see each other and work like hell to get things done. But you can't have any original ideas if you don't actually spend time with actual people who do lots of different things. Because it takes a village, doesn't it?
Like spending 4 years with teenagers and lots of walking.
Lots of walking.
That's out in the world. What do you wish people understood about you?
I'm coming from a good place. I don't know. It all comes to when I started working in education, because I felt like what was missing everywhere was mentors. There just weren't any mentors. There were no people sort of helping people get to the next step. And I brought it up at a lot of film festivals. And since then, I've seen big changes. And then people have become mentors, and I think that's amazing. So I think in my role is that I want the best for my students, and I have my whole vested interest is in them doing well. I have no other agenda. And sometimes when you get advice from people, it's not always without agenda or whatever. So I like to help people sort of selflessly. I don't expect a pat on the back. I don't expect anyone to say thank you. I feel compelled to help people do whatever they want to do, or help them navigate it. Because when I was confused, there were not enough mentors helping me navigate those. And I didn't ask for help either. And I was trying to navigate it by myself, and I should have reached out and asked people for more help.
Did you feel like you could, though?
No. So that belief was not there for me. So if I can help young people believe that they can, or know that they can do that, it's really rewarding watching people do well.
If you're on the right side of that, because you said there was a lot of resentment for you when you did well.
Yeah, and that's probably why I want. Well, no, I think I was like that before I did well. I was like that when I helped. That's why I ended up in education, because I was kind of evaluating my skills, my sort of strengths and limitations or whatever, and I was thinking like, what do I actually do? Oh yeah, sort of like helping people get to the next stage in their career. And I'd helped like a lot of people when I was working as a photographer to represent themselves or whatever in the way that they wanted to, and talk to them about how they wanted to, sort of consulting with them in how they wanted to drive their careers. And I watched them do really well, and I thought, oh, well, good for them. And my feeling is usually good for them. And I wish there were more people like that who had more confidence in themselves and their own abilities to be like not comparing themselves to people all the time, and just being pleased for others when they do well, because it's such a waste of energy otherwise. If you're not working on yourself, you're just concentrating on whatever somebody else is doing.
Speaking of self-work.
Sorry, my back's gone to sleep.
Sorry, you take
Oh,
time.
Christ.
These are dad's chairs. You
Yeah,
can
so
blame him.
comfortable. Are they originals? Yeah. Oh, well done.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
But they're not the comfiest things
No,
in the
they're
world.
not. It's the price you pay for taste.
How relevant. Making my guests in agony. Brilliant. Honestly, I do this all day. So by the time
my God.
I finish,
And you have to go for a run in the
I'm
middle of in between each one.
on the floor. Speaking of self-work, when did yours begin?
Self-worth?
Work.
Self-work. What do you mean?
Well, because you were talking about...
Reflecting.
we were talking about, yes, certainly. And when did you start... I mean, I don't know, but when did you start taking yourself seriously?
I started taking myself seriously just before I went to film school, in my 20s, around age 27. And I got focused, because prior to that, I was not focused. And I put myself first, and I thought, I'll do what I want to do, and I won't be following around a band. I'll be doing what I want to do. Yeah, and developing my own skills and making sure that I make it happen. And then after film school, after I'd won and everything, and I had to think about, because everyone is blowing a load of smoke where the sun doesn't shine. It really pushes you to be like, is this real or is this not real?
And the fashion industry, my feeling is that it's full of that.
No. No, do you know
Right,
what?
okay.
No, not as much as the film industry. Advertising, 10 times worse. I think, yeah, and I feel like I got a real sense of responsibility, not from directing films, from working with young people, from being a teacher. And I think that's because my main beef with with everything, with anything, I think everyone has to move towards whatever their beef is with the world, right? My beef is with education. I don't feel like I had the best opportunities when I went. I just had like a bog standard education in the UK. And I don't feel like I was heard at all. And you're just in the mix with hundreds of others. And I feel like I was completely misunderstood through primary and secondary school. A-levels, I started to be understood because my teacher had previously worked at Broadmoor. But he was an artist, and he was really sort of celebrated like any difference in anybody, and he loved all of us, and we really felt that. But I think this is it's kind of a normal narrative for anybody. But after A-levels, I went and did foundation. And then when I did my degree, I felt like it was a similar situation of far too many people being on the course and it just not really reflecting anything to do with what I thought higher education would be. I thought there was a lot of people just didn't really care. A lot of tutors that were very disengaged with the whole thing. And my whole beef with everything has been mainly that sort of lack of commitment of educational people who are supposed to be your main sort of mentors in a huge chunk of everybody's life. And when I went to the film school, because it's part private, part charity, the way that it's run, the experience I had there was on another level. And it might have been something to do with the fact that I was ready at that time in my late 20s. But also I couldn't believe people are actually listening to me. And I couldn't believe I was going to be given these opportunities. It blew my mind. And I thought, well, if anything, if I can give that back to people somehow, if I can create those spaces for people like me who want to tell stories, who are interested in all sorts of different things, all sorts of different professions, all sorts of different parts of the process, then that I'll feel more complete if I can be that person and be someone of value to a young person. So I think I've got away from whatever question you asked me to begin with. It was about self-improvement or something.
You've done well. This is the idea.
Yeah. So after working with teenagers for about 4 years, it's quite taxing. It's quite exhausting because they're so emotional. It does take quite a lot from you, and you can feel very tired and a bit burnt out from it because that system's not funded properly. And I felt like I needed a change. So I saw an advert for somebody to lead a fashion film course, and I was like, oh yeah, that's the thing that I love doing. So I applied for the job, and then I pitched them a course. I literally wrote the course, pitched it to them, and that was that. And I've been there for like 6.5 years.
And what do you want your students to leave with?
A portfolio and a clear sense of what they are good at and which role they will be walking into in film production. I get 100 people coming to me telling me they're going to be a director, and I'm like, but are you? Are you though? So we have those kind of conversations, and we try and break everything down to think about collaboration. The whole thing is about collaboration, the whole thing. Nothing is about an individual lording it over everybody else. The whole thing is about collaborative relationships.
Why does everyone want to be a director?
Because it's connected to the ego in the most obvious sense. But I mean, some people are just born like that, aren't they? But there's, I think their understanding of the role of a director is very different from the reality of it. Because if they go into advertising, they'll be shooting something, and then the creative agencies won't want that person in the room when they're editing it. They'll be like, you can leave now. So I just think people need a bit more clarity on those roles on my course, so they understand where their skills would fit in and where they could spend the next 10 years. And they might end up directors in however many years' time, but hopefully they are tested to their limits through the education process, because education is kind of like free time that you've bought yourself in a place that has facilities that you can experiment and sort of test your boundaries, test your skills as much as possible. And then by the end of it, you should find out what you're good at, where you want to drive your career, and have a portfolio that demonstrates those skills, and that be something you can talk about in an interview. That's the main thing. I just want everyone to be as clear as possible on that by the time that they leave, because I was not clear even though the film school was the best thing ever, I still didn't know where to, even though I did my best and I got the dream job, the understanding of the sort of processes and the fact that there's so much politics in the industry, and that I had no idea there were so many young men in the industry. I had no idea. I was led to believe that there was loads of women, and I thought that animation was a nice niche place to work because you would have long periods of time where you'd be employed, and it was slightly friendlier in the sense that you would build a sort of community during those productions, and it's not just too quick or whatever. But the reality of it was, because all the jobs I had worked on were different, from like kids' TV to commercials to feature film prop building, and I seemed to have so many different things that I could do that I found it was just too stressful to be able to build that foundation. And it just did me in by the end. And when I herniated the disc in my back, that was the last straw for me. I was like laid in bed for 6 weeks and couldn't walk up the stairs. I couldn't lift up a kettle. And I thought, well, it's, I can't sort of sacrifice my health anymore for this job that is really, really hard to navigate and define and make it work. Because I've got what I wanted. I did really well, and doing that all over again it's like you start from the very beginning again, because I didn't have, when I left that film school where I had everything, like a cinema to test all my stuff out on, studio space, crew, composers. I could just walk into their room and be like, oh, can you compose this thing for me? And it's all there, all on one site. And I don't think I felt like, it's going to take me years to get back to that place again. Years. And I feel like I just had that experience and it was perfect. And should I ruin it? Do you know what I mean?
But it sounded like your motivation had moved on anyway.
Totally. Oh, yeah, completely.
You did walk into a room and say, I'm going to teach.
Yeah, I did, pretty much.
and that was it. And that's that's wonderful. But it sounds like you know, on the face of it, it sounds like you had an extraordinary experience.
Mm-hmm.
Does that continue? Is every day extraordinary at university, or is it a different thing altogether?
Things have calmed down a little bit. The best thing has been getting a dog. That's been lovely because my life isn't just about work. So I have the dog to come home to, which is just the icing on the cake of life, I must say.
She's a sweetheart.
Isn't she the best? Look how good she's being. But no, work is amazing because they just built this new building and it's like this modernist building. And it's enormous. And it's in East Bank where they're trying to reinvigorate the whole area in East London. So you know how we've got South Bank? This is going to be East Bank.
Oh.
So next door to me, I've got the V&A, Sadler's Wells, and BBC Music. So all these new cultural hubs of places have opened up. Plus, I was in the middle, and we're like 13 stories high, and it's sort of got Guggenheim vibes in the building. And everyone is dressed so the clothes are amazing, and people in fashion are hilarious. They're really funny, and I think fashion is no longer about what you are referring to, sort of pretentiousness and stuff like that. Definitely not, especially with the sort of social purpose that's come into every single company. And the fact
I think from an outsider's perspective, does it still carry the maybe I'm totally out of date, but the Devil Wears Prada kind of vibe.
Yeah. Yes, but that is you can't take that seriously. It is nonsense. It is just funny. It's so that film is funny. It's supposed to be hilarious. If you can laugh at people that speak to you in that way, then you're going to win. If you take that personally, then joke's on you. You know? You have to be able to navigate people like that. That's really fun. Because I do just find it very funny because it's like being in an episode of some sort of like terrible, you know, Spanish sitcom or something, you know? That's why it makes me laugh. Because I'm so grounded in reality that I you know, it is funny. But no, the whole place is amazing. I love it. And I like all the people. Everyone's really nice. I think, yeah, more so than the film industry, more welcoming and tolerant, I think. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, you know, by your word, it may change the perspective for what it's worth on our little show, Ben.
Next time I come here, you'll be head to toe in Balenciaga.
Oh, well, darling. Well, darling.
Tesco's.
Tesco's, mate. Yeah. M&S. Thanks very much. They're doing a bit better at the moment, I understand it. The M&S.
Your jacket's nice.
Well, thanks very much.
Well
I don't think it is. I don't think this is actually M&S. This is
actually
Ted Baker.
Hair going
Ted Baker
on.
is currently
It's all happening. Well done.
Ted Baker is currently in administration. So.
You're ready for your camping holiday?
Well, that's our usual attire in the old puffer jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah, North Face, absolute fortune, brilliant. What makes you envious?
What makes me envious? I'm quite slow. So people who are quite quick.
Slow?
Yeah. I fit in the fashion. Hey!
You tell him. You tell him. You tell him off. There was a noise.
What makes me envious? I'm quite slow, I think, in the way that I do things, but I think it's suited to my industry right now. Like, if I was working on set, I really don't like working on live action sets, and I found that out the hard way. I was doing some art direction for a kids series, and it was all about, we had to imagine puppets were in the scene and they were in a bowl of oranges in the middle of the table. And I was like, this is doing my head in. I can't imagine. I would never do continuity because my memory would be I would never be able to do that. And yeah, I just really did not. I don't think I think on my feet in those situations on set. I feel like I'm quite slow. That's why I chose animation. because animation is slow. It's frame by frame, right? So I slowed the whole process down completely so I could enjoy it and had time to think and consider things.
And there's also a significant degree of control you get
Absolutely.
with animation.
Well, yeah, although the way I chose to do it, I was outside in a field with a stills camera and I was animating people, so there wasn't much control. But it did slow the process down, and I feel like I got more out of it that way. And I wasn't, it wasn't like, oh, we've got to shoot however many a day, and it's sort of like loads of pressure. However, you put me in a classroom with people and I stand up and I can think on my feet in that situation. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. What makes you envious? I think you get, do you not think you get past a lot of that?
Certainly.
Yeah.
What used to make you envious?
What used to make me envious? Not having, when I was working in film, I never had any money, so I just wear all my mum's clothes. And I didn't like that. And I really wanted nicer clothes. That's so shallow and terrible, but I love clothes. So it was really sort of a bit demoralising to wear my mum's clothes to work in a job where I was telling everyone I was a director. So that was dreadful because I couldn't afford to buy clothes. So mum was like, oh, you can have here you go, here's a t-shirt or a sweater or whatever that's a bit too tight because my mum's like 4 foot high. And I was like sort of uncomfortable. But if you watch my film, it's all in there. It's about a young guy who's wearing clothes that don't fit him with his mum and dad. And they're like mechanical robots who keep repeating the same patterns. The house is full of some weird stuff.
Yeah.
If you watch it, it's all there. I don't even have to say anything.
Interesting.
It's all in it.
Was that intentional?
No, but through my self-reflection, I was like, oh, it's all there. My whole personality and who I am and what I want is all in that silly little 12-minute film. So...
I mean, raw subconscious in a way.
Completely. So that gives you such a great understanding of the whole process then after that. And you think, oh, I'll give this to other people. Other people need this. I do think everyone should make a film, and they can now. Everyone can. And, the less you know about it, the more raw the experience that comes out, right? So that's what's really interesting. And when fashion's about your, how you represent yourself, and, you have to dig through people's sort of cultural identity and their life experience to understand what they want to say, because films are conversations, but visual conversations. So that's the interesting part of it.
Fascinating. Because I did I started in music and I did an album, my first album. I listen to that now and just go, yeah, I said it. I said what my problems were.
Well.
I said it was all there. It was all there. But at the time,
you're not listening.
You've got no concept of it. So no, you're absolutely. I totally agree. It's a fantastic way of, self-exploration, learning and growth. And I suppose you don't need to. I've consequently done a bucket load of therapy, but
well done. Good for you. I'm yet to do that.
Well, I mean, I tell you what, you do come out the other side thinking everybody should do it for the same kind of reason that you just articulated about making a film. It's just a different way to explore it, I guess. And it was curious because you used the phrase earlier, unpacking, and that is the concept of therapy is pulling out all the old stuff and opening the box that you put it in and digging it all out and going, let's look at that again. Because it's not what you thought it was. And you carry all that stuff around with you on a day-to-day basis. That's affecting you in ways that you can never possibly understand. But once you take it out and you look at it again, if you can get there, which is the challenge of therapy, which is why it takes so bloody long, you look at it again as a 35-year-old, you go, oh yeah. And that's literally how I would describe it. It's like, yeah, fair enough, mum, dad, brother, arsehole,
Yes,
friend,
yes. Yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
100%,
Like,
yeah.
I totally get where you were coming from or whatever. But if you've still got that 5, 7, 10-year-old version of that, then you can't shake it because
No,
you've
you won't
tucked it
move
away,
on,
and
will you?
and
Yeah.
your personality is built upon it. I fumble around a lot, but I think the more I do this, the more I do my own therapy. It is very revealing in a different way, and you can just, as you have managed to, which I really admire, because I look at something like Devil Wears Prada and I see the accusation and I shrivel to something like that. And I think that's the other side of it. And you saying that, oh well, if you can't just laugh at it, then there's something not there. I mean, absolutely, I so see that, but I also see the other side of somebody, from my perspective, where I cannot handle confrontation.
Yeah.
There is, I walk down any public street and I'm terrified that I'm going to piss somebody off.
Wow.
That's my existence in a nutshell. And that's a daily battle. And so to see your perspective on that is fascinating because...
I think I used to be a bit like this. But when I started working with teenagers, that something broke there because I was telling them to walk through the fire. And I thought, hey, why aren't I walking through the fire? And I was like, okay, I've got to be a symbol of what walking through the fire looks like for these people, because there's a responsibility. And I imagine that's what happens to people when they have children, So I just felt the responsibility. And I thought, oh, okay, that's what I've got to do. And I must do that. And I did, and I have. And I still speak to people I talked to years ago now. So they still message me, still talk to them, still check in with them, make sure they're all right, Because I always felt like, especially young men, they were always just floating. And they were all just floating, and I've got them on a string, and my feet are on the ground, and I'm like, you all right up there? And they're trying to work out what it is to be a young man in 2019 or whatever, 2018. And I felt an affinity with that, and I wonder if that's got anything to do with my dad's addiction experience and the fact that I do remember some of it from being young and understanding that, for example, I would sit at the top of the stairs and be like, Daddy, don't eat cigars and don't drink beer. And I would run after him, hold on to his leg as he was leaving to go to work. And he stopped drinking when I was 3. So I remember that. And Mum's like, I can't believe you remember these things.
Wow.
But my understanding was that my dad is a bit ill. So we need to help him not be ill, So when I was put into a room of young men, I feel like maybe some of that was there. And I was like, I'll help these young guys, There was some of that as well.
Wow. Fascinating how it drives you.
Yeah.
And how you retain it, again, subconscious or
Yeah, it's
or
all,
not.
everything's connected and feeds into each other, doesn't it? But teaching is all about reflection as well. Everything you do in a classroom, you have to think about after you've done it and think, how can I improve that? How could I do that a bit differently? So it's a good practice for life as well.
It sounds like your students are incredibly lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you.
For what it's worth, because yes, there are few fantastic teachers out there who really do care. Speaking of parents,
Yes.
what are the best things that you owe to your parents?
I probably owe them a lot of money.
No, the best things, not the worst. Well, I suppose best for them, yeah.
My mum's got a great sense of humour, and I think she always makes a joke of anything that's a bit too serious, probably as a sort of survival mechanism. Yeah, she's really, really a funny person. And my dad, I think that his therapy or whatever he went through at the Priory really changed him. And the fact that I've seen an addict change, I think, is a gift in itself for any child. To have a parent that has gone through that and has been clean for 40 years is quite incredible. And yeah, we're just really proud that he has managed to stay off all of it. I think we're really lucky that he did.
I mean, your dad's been a part of my life from day one. What feels like day one. He's always been here.
How old were you when David started working here?
Well, I don't know when he did start working here. So Stanley died when I was 9.
Was that like 1999?
So 1999. And then...
That's when he started working.
Literally that year.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, when you're 9, I mean, before Chiddickbury was, you know, Hill Farm, and that's kind of one era of my life. And then David was always here. He was always over in his, you know, workshop, and that grew and grew over the years, and he became more and more prolific, you know. So it's been a fantastic experience to film him for him, you know, and try and capture that and try and put that in a nutshell and capture his essence. I'm really looking forward for you to see it. And
I'm looking forward to seeing it because he'd only just finished the boat, I think, by the time that. I'm so glad he took you there.
And this is all part of it. I'm just having to figure out how to include it all. Whilst it's still being watchable by a layman, entertaining, you know,
sure.
all that usual stuff. But we'll get there. No, fantastic, and it's such a great idea and question to be able to go, look, we do have all sorts of things. Most of us certainly have all sorts of things that we want to hold our parents to account about.
Yeah.
But being able to reflect and go, actually, you know, you're fair enough, and it was difficult, but thanks for this, that, X, Y, and Z, and this, that, and the other.
There's no perfect parent that exists on the planet. There can't be. There's some people I go and see and I look at their family and I think, what a gorgeous family, and look at the love that emanates from this house. And how incredible. But, you know, everybody's got something underneath the facade. Well, it's not a facade, it is how it is. But there's other things. People are like three-dimensional.
Whatever. Yeah. Vital. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, Vicky, this being filmed, this conversation, it's all about everything that you value, which is helping others and putting it out there and taking a leap and putting it out there and in the hope that someone says something that's useful to somebody and they take that into their own lives. You know? If there is a purpose to this at all, it is that. So I, you know, it's undefined really, but that's part of the beauty of it. So it's really wonderful to have you here. Are you good at taking criticism?
I don't know. Probably not. No, I probably feel terrible if I do something wrong. Are you going to criticise me now? Go on, lay it on me.
Why?
I'm ready.
Why?
Then we can have a fight outside.
No.
Criticism is never easy to hear, is it? But I think in the context of work, I'm like, just tell me everything that's wrong and I'll make a list and I'll improve all of it. Personal criticism, that's a different thing.
So you're a perfectionist?
Yeah, totally. Well, that, you know, when somebody puts you in a ballet class when you're 3, and that's kind of sets you up for being a perfectionist, I think. And that's an illness in itself, isn't it? So, but I think that I try not to be, because I'm aware of it. And my hair just won't allow it, so. Or my face. I look like David, you know. I sit opposite him having dinner. It's like looking in a mirror.
Hang on a minute. I'm not that old. Bless him. Oh, what a wonderful man.
What do you like about David?
What do I like about David? What's not to like about David? I know it's difficult to be objective when you are daughter, but it's just his way. You know, he has a way about him in the way that he says things, and his hilarious little jokes that are forever forthcoming, and particularly about his darling wife. There are fantastic jokes, and living under his feet, and
right. God, that's an old one.
that is just wonderful. Under his wife's feet, I think.
Yeah, doing his work. He had his lathe in the cellar, and he was doing that work under his wife's feet. Yeah,
it's just perfect. It's just a wonderful way of looking at the world, and I think, and that comes from, in his own way, he's find a way through.
Yeah. With a pinch of salt, take things with a pinch of salt.
Yeah, and obviously you have that in spades, which has just been amazing to because we've sort of been
passing ships in the night.
There you go.
Yeah.
And this is part of the reason why, objectively, it was a conscious decision to not know anything about you before you came and sat down, because then you can tell me your version.
Yeah.
And I think, for somebody, in just sort of looking at that for a second, I think that's potentially very nice. I'm hoping that it's like, well, all this has happened, but this is my version of it, and this is how I feel about it, because I imagine it was a complete whirlwind.
Yeah.
Entirely. We're doing well. I think we'll do one more. And it's the best one.
Oh, she's lying down. Okay,
she's
sorry,
lying down.
just checking she's okay.
I can't see her. She's
there. She just disappears into the darkness. She's by my
Oh,
scarf.
yeah. That's hilarious. Do you feel you live an ordinary or an extraordinary life?
I feel like I live an extraordinary life, and I feel that's been a constant. I feel I live an extraordinary life because that's been a conscious decision to do so. There's nothing. I do not want a beige life. I couldn't handle it. John Lewis, I don't want to be in the John Lewis catalogue. Unsubscribe.
Why?
I just don't feel excited by it. I feel like I've tried those jobs, those sort of boring jobs you have when you're younger, and you listen to people's experiences of life, and I would be like, I don't want to spend time in this room, because I feel like my brain is just getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's stagnant in this room, and the conversation is not going anywhere beyond sex, death, and poo. So that's what I find with a lot of my early experiences in employment. And I just thought I'm curious and I'm motivated. So I feel like education is the right place for me, because I am constantly curious. I want to know what's next. I don't want to talk about sex, death, and poo forever. It's so boring. Have that every day with a dog. Whole life becomes
Sex, death, and poo.
Just poo. No sex and death. Death is obviously coming. She won't be having any sex because I'll get her done.
Yeah.
But poo is obviously top of the agenda at every, twice a day with her.
Try having a daughter. That's another level of poo. That's another level of poo. Not just isolated poo, but poo.
Goodness me.
It's great.
Well done.
Thank you very much.
That's something I'll never experience, but congratulations. You've completed the life thing.
Honestly, sex, death, and poo is my... What? No. Hang on a minute.
All at the same
Retraction. Redacted, I believe it's called. Vicky, it's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
How was that?
That was fine. I'm very tense, so yeah. Hopefully I don't have cramp in my back when I get up. There we go.
Oh, bless you.
Thank you.
Maybe I should have given you a cushion.
Maybe that would have been nice, wouldn't it? But I'd get too comfortable. It was really nice to talk to you.
Wow.
As an adult, isn't that amazing?
Thank you for watching Characters. I hope you were able to gain and grow from our guests' vulnerability. To discover more characters, please subscribe to support the show and allow us to share more of our true colours. Here's the latest episode, or one YouTube has picked for you. Enjoy.